Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis, and this is an extra edition of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. You may be noting a ton of videos that are coming up this week. This is just going to be one of them, and we're going to have Pratt Rogers. It's Monday afternoon. You normally get him on Tuesday night, but it's just because of how many videos we're getting. And honestly, I nothing against Pratt, but I want like Michael Borky and David Eckert and Michael Katz to get a prime time position. So Pratt, you're like relegated to the 3:00 Eastern slot. How you doing, bud?
Sounds like almost like the CBS game or something. I need the night game performance, Steven. I'm kidding. I'm doing well. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Hey, at least you're not 11 a.m. in it, right?
You know, like we've talked about, the 11 a.m. Vandy game holds a special place in our heart, but maybe not the primetime viewing we'd like.
Yeah, and are you completely moved in now that you've gotten down to Jackson?
I am completely moved in as of today. I really probably yesterday. Finally, just got the last piece of furniture in. I'm just throwing stuff around right now. I'm spread out everywhere. But anyway, it's need to go find a place and start checking a few boxes on things like that. But excited to make the trip back home and spending Thanksgiving with family and fun stuff like that. What do you got going on for the big week, for the big holiday?
Honestly, I'm just talking to good perspectives like you about this football game that is coming up Thursday night, because my world right now is completely revolving around the Egg Bowl, as it should. But you're moving back to enemy territory. I
Yeah.
mean, people can talk all they want to. Jackson's a Mississippi State town, and it has been for years. What is that like for you? What are you going through after spending time in Memphis, which in this game, that's obviously an Ole Miss town?
Yeah, no doubt. Memphis is definitely an Ole Miss town. I'm kind of surprised to hear you say you believe Jackson to be Mississippi State dominated. I actually believe the city's pretty 50-50 oriented. I'm sure there's no statistics to back that up, just gut instinct. But yeah, the Egg Bowl rivalry is a big deal
Well, you
around
went
here
to
for
you
sure.
went to prep, and prep is 50-50 at best.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, it's been good to get back, and I hadn't started talking a lot of trash yet. I hadn't had time, but that should come at some point as the week heats up.
Yeah, it's a weird situation that nobody that is state people, they're giving anybody anything because of what they're almost fatalistic in their view of what's coming on this weekend, and they're completely dreading it. And I always talk about, this is the game on Ole Miss's schedule each year that they most don't want to lose. Not most want to win, most don't want to lose. And Mississippi State has a little bit of that in their arsenal as well. And right now, they're just dreading to what the day after Thanksgiving is going to be, Black Friday, when you're going out about they're not planning on wearing any maroon this weekend.
That is a great adjective to describe that series. Is definitely the game you don't want to lose. Like I've said on the show before, I've got family that went to state, and the Egg Bowl is a big deal in our family. But I always want to win that LSU game more, I feel like. But, you kind of go into that series expecting, history has probably shown that LSU wins that game more than loses. And actually, a great stat. If you look at, I don't have the numbers in front of me, Stephen, but the LSU Ole Miss rivalry, it's like roughly they played like 110 times, and LSU's won like 64, and Ole Miss has won like 46, something like that. Well, those stats are almost exactly reversed in the Ole Miss Mississippi State series. So Mississippi State fans will sometimes get a little fired up if you start talking about LSU, but Ole Miss leads that series about 64 to 46, roughly. So it's almost an exact flip in Ole Miss's favor of the LSU series. It's kind of just a interesting note, but you always want to play up to your rival, and sometimes the Mississippi State takes that the gets a little frustrated if Ole Miss starts saying stuff like the little brother syndrome and stuff that's not true, but you know how that goes. And that's how Ole Miss plays LSU. And this rivalry is a big deal.
Yeah, it's a situation. It's a weird thing. And I tell people all the time, it's not that Mississippi State is I don't think they care necessarily about the LSU game, but they don't have a secondary rival, which means they can't understand what it's like to have a secondary rival. So it must not be true because we don't have one. You're only allowed to have one, obviously. And this is according to the Mississippi State people. Ole Miss and LSU is a huge deal in the Ole Miss fan base. And I think that chaps Mississippi State because they do not have the secondary rival.
I've never even looked at it like that. You're 100% right. There's no secondary rival. Never thought of that one time.
Yeah. So if they can't understand it, it's not happening to them. It's just like, okay, you're obviously lying about this, and the LSU game can't mean a ton to you because if you're like us, our game only means something. So I think that is the situation with the Ole Miss and State rival. Ole Miss and State is the primary rival on the schedule for both schools. That's the reason I call the LSU rival a secondary rival. Anybody that argues any differently, they're just kind of trying to rub it in with the opposite teams. Yeah, that's what's going on there. But I enjoy this game. This is one of my favorite games on the schedule. Like I said, I hate to lose this game. But I'm going to sit through over the next 3 days just looking forward to Thanksgiving night and wanting it to hurry up and get here.
Well, tell me, you mentioned Thanksgiving night. What do you think about the game being on Thanksgiving Day? I just think that's so tough. I get it if you live in Starkville or live in Oxford, but I think that's asking a lot for families to take time away from members of your family to go down to the game. So I typically do not make the Egg Bowl. I'm typically with family at that time, but that's that time slot that, 6:30 on Thursday night, kind of gotten popular, and they're doing away with it next year, right?
Well, no, they're not doing away with it next year. Next year, it's likely going to be Texas A&M in Texas. So all of this is a moot point to begin with. I think Ole Miss and State will be either on Friday or Saturday. I'm sorry,
I meant for our series. Yeah.
It's going to be Texas and Texas A&M likely next year because that's their traditional game. And ESPN wants that game, and it's going to have so many eyeballs after not playing it for a decade. It's going to be absolutely massive. That said, I've always liked the Ole Miss game on Thanksgiving. Now, part of that is the last time I went to an Ole Miss State game was 2012. And the last time I went to Starkville was like 2007, the many happy returns, Derek McGee's game. So I generally don't attend this game in person. So I can understand that people that actually go to the game, it might be problematic for them.
Yeah.
But people that want to watch this on TV.
Oh, that's the best. Look, I'm watching it on TV. I agree. It's the best from a TV perspective, but I think it's tough for the student athlete and tough for the fans to be at the game for sure.
Yeah. If going to the stadium is your thing. Yeah. And you'll never hear me say that you're less of a fan if you don't go to a game. Not in this age when TV money is in charge of everything. So if you're making the money from TV, it actually makes sense that you watch the game on TV, but that's another point altogether. I like watching it on TV. I like having Thanksgiving. I like sitting around and watching the game. And then you have the whole weekend to do whatever you want to, just carefree, no dread, no anything. You just get to enjoy rivalry weekend. And that's one of the best parts to me of the whole thing is the fact that I can watch Kentucky and Louisville and completely not worry because my game's over with. One way or another, my game's over with. I can enjoy all of the football that weekend because it's low-key one of the best weekends of the year in college sports.
Yeah, no doubt. And look, there's a lot on the line for both teams this year, which makes it even a better game to be played.
Yeah. What are your expectations for this game?
That's a great question. I've been talking to a lot of people. I think this is going to be a closer game than we would probably like. I think I saw the spread was like 13.5, something like that. I think that Ole Miss wins by more than 2 touchdowns, maybe right at 2 touchdowns. But I think it's going to be a close game all the way through the game. I do not see a scenario where this is a hang 50 on Mississippi State. They're re-energized right now. They with Greg Knox. I mean, I'm sure you saw the 4-wheeler and the video, locker room video. Just, I think they're re-energized.
It's fake. It's fake.
There's some juice right now. They were, I feel like State was defeated 3 weeks ago, and now I feel like there's a little bit of momentum, a little bit of juice.
The juice that they got back was not because of Greg Knox. It was because Will Rogers was playing quarterback.
That's all of that is true, and they beat Southern. All of the above.
Oh my! By the way, was Southern not the worst college football offense that you have seen this side of Iowa?
I was flipping back and forth between our game and that game, so I didn't really dial into it as much, but they did not look super dialed in. I'll say that.
No, that's a bad football game. And Pete Golding, and this is tomorrow's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Pete Golding is absolutely feasted on mid to bad offenses this season, and Mississippi State would fall neatly into that category. LSU and Georgia, they're not coming in. Heck, even Georgia Tech is not coming in to play Thursday. If you can do what you did against Auburn, Arkansas, Vandy, Mercer, those teams, you should be able to do all right against Mississippi State.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic is probably how I would describe it. It's a game we need to win. It would be a really important 10-win season for Kiffin. And I think a lot of that there was a lot of tumultuous activity at the end of last year. And getting to 10 wins this year, I think automatically sets everything's back to normal, good as gold with us,
If Ole Miss loses this game, it is on Ole Miss.
No doubt.
After the game, I will have my flamethrower and everything completely out. Because if Ole Miss loses this game, there is no excuse. You can't say rivalry games. You can't say any of that stuff. If Ole Miss loses to Mississippi State, the flamethrower is coming out. Just everybody needs to be prepared.
This is an important year of recruiting. I think we've talked about it before that if you look at 247, like 5 of the top 7 prospects are in Mississippi are committed to Ole Miss right now. Kind of one of those lingering outside that bracket would be Braylon Burnside. And this is a big game for him. He was a Mississippi State commit, grew up in Starkville, somebody that Ole Miss wants on campus. And, a game like this really sets the tone for the recruitment of the state. And you can really set a precedent, kind of sweeping house, so to speak.
Oh, yeah. I've been talking about for a couple of days that this is an opportunity for Ole Miss to separate. These opportunities do not come around very often in this series, just because the way it is. But Ole Miss has a chance to do what Georgia has done to Georgia Tech, Alabama has done to Auburn, those type games to where you just become the top dog around in the state, and the other one's just kind of like, hey, maybe we can cover this game.
Yep. And look, everybody in the world always says that Mississippi's too small of a state to have 2 premier colleges from recruiting and really 3, I know. And, from the collegiate perspective and money and all of those things that play into good football teams. And, if Ole Miss could really separate itself here in the next few years, that starts today.
Yeah, it really does. And, Ole Miss just had a decommitment from Maurice Davis. Okay, defensive end out of Georgia. Good player. If you watch his film, I just absolutely love watching that guy's film because of how he plays. But he decommitted, and he is still basically liking my stuff and retweeting my stuff. He's still engaged with me, which that is not the action of somebody that is decommitted to your school by choice.
Yeah.
Normally when they do that, they go cold turkey.
Yeah.
The fact that he is still doing this, that kind of lets me know that Lane Kiffin has a little bit of mojo going on in recruiting. I think Charleston Collins is a real threat on the defensive line.
That would be so awesome.
Yeah, that's a top 100 player. I think Caleb Odom is a possibility. I think Braylon Burnside is a possibility. He released his final 3, and Mississippi State isn't even in it. He was a Mississippi State.
I saw that.
And it's just a situation to where it's like, hey, Lane Kiffin may be about to have an old school national signing day type closing with a chance to reel in a top 15 class. Whenever 3 months ago, everybody was losing their mind about recruiting.
Look, recruiting is not for the faint of heart, and we all know that. It is definitely a patient person's game. I mean, I get worked up about it too. And State had that big weekend going back. I mean, this is a Ole Miss podcast on the Egg Bowl talking about State, but they had that big weekend. And what was it, like
in June,
early August, or it was June? You're right.
Yeah,
and
it was the week after. It was the week after I did a video talking about how I miss Ole Miss and State recruiting battles, and it's just a shame that they don't have any money and the rivalry isn't the same as it was. And then that weekend, all of a sudden, 3 big-time players commit to them. I don't know that Mississippi State's going to end up getting more than one of them.
Yeah, I remember. I think everybody was just kind of scratching their head. Jimothy Lewis, Braylon Burnside, J.J. Harrell, we were all kind of like, what's the deal here?
And the Arnett effect is real.
The Arnett effect, yeah. Well, anyway, yeah, that may not have gone viral on that one, Steven. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I love the in-state recruiting battles that we've talked about ad nauseum. And anyway, but it's a big game to step forward in the state and really kind of plant your flag as the flagship, so to speak.
Yeah, this is a big game for separation purposes. It doesn't come around very often. And Ole Miss has the opportunity to be honestly in a really good position moving forward. And the fans should go to the game in Starkville. I'm not going to tell everybody that they're a bad fan if they don't or something like that, but they should go to the game because this is an opportunity, because the "we just beat the hell out of you" cheer at the end of the game could be louder than the cowbells could be during the game.
Yeah.
And this kind of that final revenge for what happened back in the mid 2010s, whenever that is what this game could actually be. And I think that it would be a shame that Ole Miss fans missed that. Not necessarily going or not going, but the opportunity for what presents itself is interesting to me.
Yep. No, I agree. And I think that this paves the way for a lot of goodwill in the state that is needed, no doubt. So yeah, I think we end up pulling it out.
So much prettier than maroon. Oh my goodness.
You know, I don't love the maroon uniforms by any stretch of the imagination, but maroon and white and black are just kind of tough colors to work with.
Yeah. When them and Texas A&M play, I'm just looking at, just shaking my head. It's like, what are you guys even doing?
Yeah. Not easy.
Interesting. So what's your prediction on the game this weekend?
So I think we go over the 13.5 mark. I think I'll say we win by 14-15, something like that. And I'm worried about their defensive line. I really am, against our offensive line. I don't think this is going to be a lighted up game. I think this is probably going to be, maybe 28-14, something like that, Steven. I mean, somewhere right in there. I think we cover, but not by much.
Yeah, I think they also said that I looked on the weather and it was going to be dry. It should be in the 40s on Thursday night. So we'll see exactly how it goes. Later in the week, I'll give my prediction. Everybody can imagine what it's going to be, but I will give it a little bit later on in the week. But anyway, Pratt, thank you very much for stopping by. And thanks everyone for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Pratt Rogers joins us every week. Whenever we talk next week, it'll be about how Ole Miss took apart Mississippi State. I'm calling it right now.
Man, don't jinx us. Knock on wood. But I hope so, and I'm looking forward to it next week.
All right, Pratt. We'll see you then, bud.
All right. See you, man. Bye.
All right.